His morning crew with Rob, Allison, and Jim.
Avalon, and it's Jody McBrayer.
Oh, top of the morning to you.
So you're back with Avalon after 12 years?
Mm-hmm.
How did that all happen?
Oh, boy. Well, I took about 8 years off from music. Well, 6 years off from music completely. Like, I didn't sing at all. Got diagnosed with heart disease, went through some stuff just with family, and it was time to just step away for a little bit, get burned out. And in that 6 years, I didn't sing or do anything at all. And then I started traveling sort of slowly and surely, but not a lot. And then, oh, look, it's my baby girl. And, my other baby girl. Oh, I miss them. And then, I got a phone call. I started traveling and doing music. I sing with another trio called Cana's Voice, and we were traveling and doing that. And Greg Long called me one day and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm actually in a song meeting with Cana's Voice." And he said, "Well, I got something I want to ask you." And I said, "Okay." He goes, "You ever thought about coming back to Avalon again?" And I was like, "I absolutely have not thought about that." And he said, "Well, Jan and I have been talking, and we sort of want to get this going again, and we just want you to pray about it." And my biggest thing was Avalon, when we were at our peak, we were doing like 280 dates a year, which was crazy. And my wife and I were newlyweds. I had a 1-year-old. It was, we just never saw each other. It just put a real strain on our relationship. And so I was terrified to go home and tell my wife, "Hey, they want me to come back and sing with Avalon again." And we sat down on the couch that night. I'll never forget, after dinner. And I looked at my wife and said, "Okay, I got to tell you something." And she's like, "Uh-oh." And I said, "Greg Long called me today." And she's like, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Would I ever be interested in singing with Avalon again?" I said, "But I don't know. I don't think it's the right thing." And my wife grabbed my face with her hands and looked at me. She goes, "You are crazy if you don't go back." And I said, "Why do you say that?" She goes, "Because think of all that you've learned. Think of all that God has brought us through in the last 12 years and how great it's going to be to sing those songs again with that kind of purpose and that kind of message behind it." She goes, "You have to go back and finish what you started." And I was like, wow, that's really cool. So she's, my biggest cheerleader, and here we are.
Well, speaking about all that you've been through, you're really passionate about breaking down the prejudices associated with depression and advocating for positive change within the church regarding mental health. Does that stem from your own battle?
It does, yeah. We walked through a lot. When I left Avalon, it was just sort of like a series of things, and I talk about it a lot. I actually just finished a book, I just finished the first draft of a book, and it's in the editing processes. But it talks about just a lot of the struggles that we experience and how a lot of people sometimes just don't have the physical ability to deal with those struggles. And depression is real. I mean, it's happening in our churches all the time with pastors, with lay people who are integral parts of the church. They're so afraid to go and talk to somebody that they're struggling with depression or anxiety or whatever. And some of these guys are even going so far as to take their own life because they just can't handle the pressure. And that's something that I kind of want to change the outlook of that within the church, that it's not a sign of weakness to stand up and say, "Hey, I struggle with depression," but it's really strength. It takes a lot of guts to stand up and say, "Look, I'm dying here and I need help." And I want to just kind of reignite the fact that that's what church is about. This is supposed to be a place where we come and we get healing, and this is supposed to be a hospital, and we build each other up and we strengthen one another so that we can go into the world and tell the world about Christ. And if we're not doing that, then I feel like we're missing what church is all about. And it's a real thing. And, yes, I've gone through it myself, so I'm speaking from experience.
It sounds like you've helped some people walk through that.
I have had the chance to do that, but, you sort of have to go through your own personal challenges first before you can really help anybody else. At least that's how I feel. And God has really walked me through some unbelievable circumstances and brought me to the other side where I have a unique perspective. I can look at it and say, "Listen, I got through this, and here's how I got through this." And I think that that's why God allows all of us to go through difficulty. If we share our scars, there's healing in knowing you're not alone.
You stepped away from music a little bit ago, you said, like a minute ago. And then you worked an office job.
I did.
What was that like? I mean, that's totally different
I
from...
was horrible at it.
You were horrible at the office job? I mean,
Yes.
What'd you do, push papers? What?
Well, I went to Liberty University, and I had a business degree from Liberty, and that was my father. I mean, you knew my dad really well.
Yeah.
My father's like, "Listen, I love the fact that you're singing, but you got to have something to fall back on in case this doesn't work out." I was like, "Oh, Dad, it'll be fine." But he was right, and it helped me for about 7 years. But my wife's family owns a corporate marketing company, and they had about 60 employees at the time, and so I came on and did HR for their company. The person was transitioning out, and I came on. They said, "Can you do this?" I said, "I have no idea, but I'll try." And for about 5.5 years, I just limped along in this job, and it was, I knew in my heart I was called to do something different. So I would sit behind a desk every day and just try to do what I knew I did know how to do.
I don't know why I'm picturing you like, I'm going to the copy machine.
It was so that too. It was so like water cooler. It was like The Office, what I mean? You're just kind of hanging out talking. Did you watch last night on TV? It was that kind of thing. And I did love that part of it. It was nice. And it was for a season what I needed to do. I needed to be home and invest in my family and not travel and just, my daughter was 2 years old at the time, so I was home for elementary school years and all, and it was good.
I'm being kind of selfish, but I'm glad you're back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you mentioned your heart real quick. Is your heart okay?
It is. The interesting thing about that is during that 7 or 8 year period, I did a clinical trial because, we're in Nashville, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt Medical Center's there, and they do all kinds of clinical trials at Vanderbilt. And so my cardiologist got me in to do this stem cell thing with your heart muscle, because I have a heart muscle issue. And they were literally injecting me with stem cells every month. And I would go up there and it would just make me sick. And I did it for 6 months. And the first 6 months, I couldn't even get off the couch. It was awful. But it really did make a difference. It didn't reanimate any dead muscle tissue, but it stopped the spread of it. At least we think it did in me. So I'm here. And the other thing too is I'd rather be doing what God's called me to do and die doing that than sitting and not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and so I'm here and I'm going to do it for as long as I have breath.
And that's not HR.
That's not HR.
That's
I was
Avalon.
horrible at HR.
Jody McBrayer from Avalon along with us this morning on his radio. More with Avalon coming up.